Hello, everyone. Welcome to Journey to Freedom podcast. Do you struggle in finding forgiveness with yourself or others? Are you seeking redemption and renewal? On this podcast, we invite you to join us as we talk to real people on the journey and taking the Word of God into action for your transformation. I am your host, Vickie Coakely Thornton. We can't wait for you to join us. Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Vickie, the visionary of Journey to Freedom, and we will be talking today about forgiveness. And I have a guest with me, a great person, a great friend, a pastor, a mentor, and his name is Pastor Tom.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about forgiveness. And forgiveness is like a subject that some people don't even want to touch because they have certain things that have happened to them and they just don't want to deal with it. But we're going to be dealing with it. So pay attention. Hopefully you can get some insight about forgiveness. Hello, Pastor Tom.
Hello, Vic. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Yes.
So we're going to start by just talking about forgiveness and what that means to you. We'll go back and forth a little bit, just talking about forgiveness and what that really means to you.
Well, forgiveness for me, and I heard someone say this once, is when you forgive someone, you release someone from prison, and usually that person you release is yourself. Yeah. So forgiveness to me is important in my life because of what I do in ministry, as being a prison ministry pastor and working in the community. Forgiveness has to be one of my priorities because I see things and I talk to people and I hear things, and sometimes some things are hard to forgive. And I have my biases just like anybody else, and towards certain things. And so because I am a pastor and because of the ministry that I'm involved in, I have to learn to forgive as soon as I hear it. It's not a question of, I got to wait and I got to go pray about it. And sometimes I don't have that opportunity. I don't have that freedom to go say, I'm going to pray. I have to do it right then because I'm ministering to that person right at that time. And I feel honored that they would trust me to tell me some of the things that I've heard, but I do know forgiveness, it has to be a priority in ministry, especially for me. It has to be.
Yeah, it is a priority, and I think a lot of people don't think about it. And I'm talking about people that go to church, people that don't go to church, because we're dealing with all different types of people, that people just feel like if somebody does something to me, then that's it. Right. And as Christians, because we know the Bible, we try to, make things right to some extent. But people that are not, or don't care about that, are like, look, they did this to me, and I'm never going to forgive them because what they did was just outrageous. It was, just terrible, and I'm just not going to do it. And some people have gone through so many things that are hideous. And we're going to talk about that because you've gone through a lot of things. But just hideous things, and they're like, there's no way. I just cannot forgive this person, and I won't. And it's like a buildup,
It's funny. I was reading yesterday in my devotions. I was reading about how people say you can't forgive, and what I was reading yesterday was the only sin that cannot be forgiven is to sin against the Holy Spirit or blaspheme against the Holy Spirit. And it was funny to me that I read that knowing that we were going to talk about forgiveness today, because it reminded me that like you said, I've been through some things, but when you hear about some of the things that people have gone through, we don't want to forgive that person sometimes, but sometimes we have to remember, let's go back. Where did they get that from? Where was that seed planted in their life that they acted that way, or they responded that way, or they committed that act? Where did they get that? Because it had to come from someplace. Right. You weren't innately born with it in you that you would do something that usually that bad. So where did it come from? And sometimes that makes it hard for us to forgive people because we say, I wouldn't do it. Well, your upbringing might say, okay, you weren't taught to do that, but suppose you came up in a violent home, or you were abused as a child, or different things that happened in your life that's all it's been registered in your head, and when you go out into the world and something triggers that because it reminds you of where you came from. So sometimes, especially as pastors, one of the questions we have to investigate, where did that come from? Where was their heart in that? I grew up. My dad used to, when we owned a service station, my dad hired a lot of ex-offenders. So I grew up with a lot of ex-offenders, and in their conversations, you would hear some of the things that made them commit the crimes that they did, not because they were bad guys. I loved all those guys, and they were like big brothers to me, and they protected me, and they kept me from doing a lot of stupid things because they saw some things I was heading down. But when you listen to their stories, then you start understanding why they did what they did. And a lot of those guys, many of those guys, they loved my father as their father because he was the first male in their life that started telling, hold on, this is how you do this. And they got clear direction from him. And he wasn't afraid to tell them when you're going wrong and and he would celebrate them when they were doing right. So I learned growing up that I had to hear the whole story. Even today, like, I don't condemn anybody. And one thing, let me hear your whole story. Two people arguing, I want to hear the whole story because there's a middle here. There's two reasons that is your reason and the other person's reason. Well, let me hear both reasons, and I can tell you in the middle you'll find the reason. Like they say, you'll find the truth between the two stories. So forgiveness for me is okay. I have to analyze the whole situation, and as Christians we have to, because we don't know. Jesus stood on the cross, was up on the cross. He said, forgive them. One of the seven last things he said is forgive them. Being beaten, being tortured, knowing the reason, knowing these people, a lot of these people down below him looking at him despised him. And it says, but for the joy, because he looked forward to what was going to come from the sacrifice he made. So sometimes when we forgive, what we do is we're investing in the future of somebody, because most people that you're mad at, they don't even know why you're mad at them. And they're living their lives, and you're running around with your mouth stuck out, mad, angry all the time, and they're just living like, what are you mad at? I don't know what you're mad at. I don't know what I did. And sometimes they don't know what they did. And what you might be offended by, to them might be too petty to even worry about. They didn't mean it to offend you, but because of your upbringing, it offended you.
Yeah, I think so. I think that so many people, when it comes to forgiveness, it's so hurtful that they can't see. You can't see. You become blind, that you can't see. And you brought up about where did it start from, like the origin of that particular thing. So you have to kind of go back to the beginning, but we don't want to do that sometimes because it's like, look, they did it. I don't want to hear about it. Forget about it. They just did it. And sometimes we have to look at the origin and just even dealing with people in everyday life, because there's so many people that are going through so many things right now. And you're like, why are they doing this? But when you get to the origin, then you're like, okay, I can see why they do this. Or sometimes we have to put ourselves in their shoes to say, how can I live out my life? How would I have lived out my life if these things had happened to me? And sometimes we don't look at it that way. We're just like, look, they did it and that's it. And so grateful that God forgave us, and he's forgiven us. And we have to get to a place where we can forgive those. The scriptures talk about to forgive those that have trespassed against us, forgive those that have violated us, that have gone past the boundary. They're just like, no, you don't go past this line. But in our lives, people have gone past boundaries that they shouldn't have gone past. And it's not always easy for people to say, you know what, I'm going to forgive this person, not realizing that they're really helping themselves more than they're helping that person, because they're living with such bitterness and anger and so many different things that are going on in their lives. And some people just get stuck there and they can't, move forward. So it's hard when something terrible happens to you and when you have to decide, you know what, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to move forward. So I know that's happened with you. So I don't know if you want to share now. You want to talk a little bit more about some other things, or you want to get into it?
I will share that with you. I want to share something else with you.
Okay.
When you just said that, but the Bible said in Scripture they asked Jesus, how many times must I forgive? 7 times. Jesus said, no, 7 times 7. And in biblical terms, that means eternity. You keep forgiving regardless. And so sometimes, like you said, you have to, forgiveness is a decision you have to make. It's not, somebody got to make me do it. Forgiveness is something you just have to say, I forgive that person regardless, whatever. I don't have to put them in my lives anymore. I don't have to involve them in my life anymore, but I still have to forgive them. So I have to live my life. And, when I had a son, my son was murdered. My youngest son was murdered. And when I first heard the news, I went ballistic and I'm slamming doors and things. And then I remember, I said, you know what? There's nothing I can do about that, but I can forgive. And one of the things, after I had got done and did my little trauma, I went into my prayer closet and I just got on my knees and prayed that God would help me forgive the young men that murdered my son, And I'm glad I did, because when I had to go view his body, to go see your child there with 10 bullets in him and then see a hole in his head, and they plugged it with a plug that they put in his head, and everything rose up in me again, but I still had to quench that and just, okay, I still forgive him. And as you know, 2 years later, we were down the county jail and I was preaching a sermon, and one of the guys that had been convicted of murder my son was sitting 20 feet from me. And I preached my sermon. You guys didn't know. I didn't let you guys know. And when it was all over, I told you one of the guys that murdered my son was sitting right there. But then at that time, I knew that God had given me the strength to forgive him. And so I forgave him. I had to fight to forgive, because my oldest son is in prison for life for murdering a guy. And so I've been on both ends of that. And I've had to, and in fact, one of the guys at my grandson murdered a guy. Well, he didn't murder, but he was he was in that group that had murdered a guy. And I later on ministered with his stepfather. I didn't know it was his stepfather at the time, but what happened was he was in the conference, he was giving his testimony, and when he gave his testimony, I knew who he was at that moment. And so after that, I went and I apologized to him. I said, I apologize to you on behalf of my family for what my grandson did to you. And we talked, and he said, it's okay. We're both trying to make amends for what our children did. Because it wasn't like his son hadn't done some things. It was just, two young men got hung up in something they shouldn't have got hung up in, and both of them suffered for it. And both families suffered for it. So, and we still ministered together until he had some illness came in his family. He had to quit ministering with me. But I'm just saying, when you learn that you can walk in those circles with people, once you forgive. My oldest son, he was so angry at me for something he did, and we worked through that. And now I call him, I visit him as often as I can. I make sure he has money on his books, and he's forgiven me. I have a letter that he wrote me one time telling me how much he appreciated what I did. He didn't understand it then as a young man, but he understands it now, and he's a better man for it. So learning to forgive people, it allows you to probably operate around people that you normally couldn't have operated around had you kept that anger and that bitterness in you, and just let it eat you up and control your life. Then it dictates where you can go, who you can associate with, who you can talk to, what you can do. All that comes into play. But when you have the freedom of knowing, I forgive all that, you can go and come and talk to people with a better frame of mind and a better heart.
Yeah. I mean, that's like true freedom.
Yes.
That's really true freedom. And I feel like when people can't do that, and I don't know, like I'm looking at you saying, this is amazing, right? And not everybody can do that. And I know you've done it with the strength of the Lord as helping you do that. But there are so many people that have experienced loss, have experienced different things, and they just can't do it. And it's like it becomes, they wear it, They really wear it, and you can tell. You may not know exactly what happened in their life. You may not know what they've been through, but something's happened just by the way they speak, by the way they act. that something has happened in their life where they've not forgiven someone, they've held on to something for so long, for years and years and years. I believe it wears down your body. It wears down everything within you because you are not willing to surrender that thing, that forgiveness. And I feel like the reason why I have some of the people that I have coming on the podcast is because a lot of the people that I've talked to have forgiven, but there's some that I'm going to have on that have not forgiven. There's going to be some people that are going to say, you know what, I don't care what you say. I'm not going to forgive them until the day I die. There's some people that are like that. But I feel like people need to see people that have gone through it, that have gone through the process of saying, you know what, this happened to me. All these horrible things happened to me, but I'm not wearing it. I'm not holding it. Not that we don't have bad days where things are like, we all have days where it's like, you know what, but that can stand for the most part and say, look, I've been able to let this thing go and to walk in freedom, because that would that would just tear up a person's life, what you've gone through.
There's a lady who lost her son to violence that I know, and she had a very successful business, was doing great. And because of her unwillingness to forgive, she lost her business. She broke her marriage up because she could not forgive. And really, the hardest part was because her husband had forgiven. He had forgiven, knowing that heartache and all that, the crying and tears, he had forgiven. And she hadn't. And it created tension in their home because he was walking in the freedom, and our son got murdered, and you're walking like this and you're acting like this, and she could not let it go. And eventually it tore, not that the husband didn't love her, not that the husband didn't try to be with her, but over a period of time, it's just, I can't keep letting you destroy my peace because you just won't forgive. You can't do anything. What you get, there's a pastor, and I won't bring his name up, in this city who lost his son to violence, but he's invested in doing good for the community. Used his son used the loss of his son as a launch pad for him to do great things and to expand the goodness in the community. So it depends on what are you willing to invest in. See, if you stand up there and say, "I'll never forget," we all have reason, according to the world, to hate somebody and not forgive them. We all have that reason. We can find that reason that there's somebody in my life that I just never will forgive, and we can walk in that. We can all, but you have to make a choice. Okay, that person controls your life now. Everything in your life is controlled. When that person walks in the room, everything in your life just goes to that person. Says, I'm not going to smile because that person is around. I'm not going to show happiness because that person is around. I'm not going to enjoy myself because that person is around. I'm going to let that person know I'm angry. Well, that person is going on about his business, and you're seething in this thing that's burning your life up. Why? It's not going to change anything. So why would I spend my life doing that when I know, okay, I can take this situation and I can turn it around. I can help so many other people. Okay, I lost, but so did God. It says God gave his only begotten son. So that I'm free, that I can forgive, that I can be healed, that I can prosper. All the things that I need to make my life valuable was given to me at the cross out of sacrifice. So I can make other people's lives valuable out of sacrifice. I know one young man that grew up with my sons, and my youngest son, he was his best friend. He did 25 years in prison. Today, he's an entrepreneur. He has a family. He works with young people in sports. His business is successful. I mean, so he's doing, and when he talks to young guys getting out of prison, first thing he said, look, leave that alone. Go to work. Go home, drink your beer, go to bed. And that's where he's living his life. And if you talk to him, if he walked in this room right now, you would never know he had been in prison unless he told you that he's been in prison. So, but he's learned to forgive all the things that happened to him. I will digress for a minute. When he first went to prison, for years, he had anger all over him. He was angry that but he had committed the crime. You're in prison because of what you did, not what any. But he was angry because I'm in prison. I'm gonna be here, And he was actually given a life sentence. But through hard work and the way he got his sentence overturned, and they gave him 25 years, and he's out now, and he's doing beautiful. I compliment every time I get a chance. I let him know, man, I'm so proud of him, what he's done. So when I take forgiveness and use it as a tool, then I can be successful with forgiving people. I don't have to hate you. God's going to do whatever happened in your life. That's your baby. That's your bill. You have to pay that. I don't have to pay that bill, but I don't have to let you run my life either.
Right. I was thinking about when you were talking about people, their lives getting ruined and just the way they do things. Sometimes it's just a spiritual thing. I know you remember this, but we were in prison. We are prison people, y'all. We've been in prison. We go to prisons a lot. But there was a guy there, and he came up to me. We were talking about forgiveness in prison, and I know you remember this. And he came up to me and said, I cannot forgive myself.
Yes. He
said, I will not forgive myself. He committed a crime. I think he killed his wife's girlfriend or something like that. And he killed him. But the thing about it was, I said, you're already paying the price. You're already paying for for what you did. Right now, you're in prison for the rest of your life. So now you have to, physically you're in prison. Now spiritually you're putting yourself in prison because you won't release yourself from what happened. He was wrong. He destroyed his whole family. It was just a big mess. The whole thing was a mess. But I'm not sure, we just told him, look, you have to forgive yourself. But so many people will not forgive themselves. And that's an important thing that, to think about, is just forgiving yourself for, because even parents, I think we take on what our kids do too. Mm-hmm. Like we'll take on what our kids do. People do it, just a young kid. Their kid do something, they take it on. They take it so personal, which you should to some extent. But then on the other hand, especially when they become an adult, then they have to take responsibility for the things that they've done. But I think that we have to learn to forgive ourselves. And I think it's almost an epidemic just in the way that people treat themselves, the way we treat ourselves. And God is so good, and he lavishes his love on us to say, listen, if you forgive others, I'll forgive you. And so that's love, to say, I'm going to forgive you. So you have to forgive others because I'm forgiving you for the things that you've done. And then sometimes we don't even forgive ourselves. We'll hold on to stuff and let things bother us for long periods of time, when God is saying, release that thing so that you can be free. So can you tell me if you felt like there was times when it was a journey to get to where you are now, or was it just instantly, or did you was there a way was there some things that you feel like you had to go through to get to where you are, where you feel comfortable in who you are and what you're doing as far as forgiveness and as far as the way you live your life?
Well, like I said, when I first heard about my son getting murdered, I was listening, but I prayed that God would give me the strength to forgive. Okay, so I didn't know if I had that strength until that 2 year later. Then I knew, okay, God had done it. But then I had also made it up in my mind that I was going to forgive, because how could I pastor and mentor young? It's not like I lived a sin-free life.
Right.
I mean, if they would write the story about my life, there was a whole lot of dark places in my life too. So it wasn't like I was the perfect person to say, I can't forgive you because you did this, because some things that people could look at me and say, I don't forgive you for some of the things you did. So I had to make it up. I had made it up in my mind, determined that I was not going to be angry at anyone for periods of time. Do I get angry? Yes. But I've learned to instantly forgive too. It's not worth it. I value my freedom, spiritual freedom, too much that I'm going to let somebody own it other than me. I fought too many years, did too many things, gone through too many things to say, okay, I'm going to give it to you. Just do with my life what you want to. And I wasn't going to let that happen. And so at the time, during that course of the period, my son went to prison, my mother died, my brother died, my best friend died, and then my son got murdered. And it was all in a 10-year stretch. And my best friend. And so I said, I was determined that no one was going to ever put me in a position where that you would control me mentally or spiritually. I couldn't let that happen because I couldn't function. I still have other children. I have grandchildren. I have great-grandchildren. I have nieces and nephews that look to me. And I have people in my life, my wife, that depend on me. And if I'm running around and I'm the only one that's insane with unforgiveness, then how am I going to help them? Because there's battles they'll have to fight. They're not near as bad as what I had to fight. So if I'm fighting this battle, I have something. Well, when this happened to me, this is how I dealt with it. You can't say that. So you mean to tell me somebody stepped on your shoe and you can't forgive? Mm-hmm. You know, it's that kind of mentality, because you see young men dying every day. You stepped on my shoe, or you said something to me, or you walked on the corner that I loaf on. Things that are really idiotic that they're dying about. So how are we going to minister to them if we can't forgive people for the little things that go on in our life? I wake up every morning. I still have my health. I got a nice family. I have beautiful friends. I'm ministering. I'm doing what I like to do. I retired from a job that I worked at. I mean, my life. Am I rich? No, but I am rich in a lot of other things. I'm free. I do what I want. I do the things that I love to do. So I can't let something like unforgiveness because of something you said. I remember when I was growing up one time, and I was really small then. I was small growing up, and I hated somebody to call me a name, and I won't use the name because it's a foul name, but they would call me this name, and I would just freak out. I would go off, and being small, I would get beat up a lot because I was too small to get, you know. And one day my father pulled me aside. He said, "Well, let me ask you a question." He said, "Are you what they call you?" I said, "No." He said, "Then why are you responding to it? When you respond to it, now you said that name, you're attaching that to yourself." So after he said that, it helped me for the rest of my life. If you're talking about me and I know it's untrue, why am I responding to it? And because people are going to talk about you anyway. Oh, that you're a snob, or you're stuck up, or you think you're better than us, or it's going to happen all year. I don't care who you are. You're not that good that nobody's going to talk about you. Somebody right now doesn't like everybody in this room. Somebody don't like them. So why get involved with that? So I don't hear those things. I hear what I need to hear to do what I'm supposed to do, and that's all you can do. You have to look at it and say, I'm going to make my life count for something. Being mad does not count for anything. It doesn't help anybody. It doesn't raise anybody up. So it's easy for me to forgive people because I know, look, I'm not who I don't have what you think I have. I'm not who you think I am. So I remember years ago, and I'll tell you this story. I was doing real bad at it, and I wasn't with the Lord then. It was a dark time in my life, and I was doing real bad. And one day I came out my house where I lived with my mother at the time, and my car wouldn't start. And I'm freaking out. I'm standing out in the middle of the street, kicking my car, cussing at the car. And my mother just stood in the door and just looked at me, let me get it out, and I walked back in the house. She said, "Now, did that accomplish anything? Did any of that what you just did out there? Is the car started?" And I said, "No, Mom." She said, "Well, then you wasted a whole lot of energy when you could have just walked away, called somebody, got your car running, and went on about your business. So you wasted all that time in anger about something that you didn't change." And that was another lesson that I learned, that's a time lost when I'm mad at people. I'm not accomplishing anything. Mm-hmm. I can confront them and say, "Okay, why are you mad at me?" Now, if they choose to tell me, fine. If they don't, okay, well, look, I don't know why you're mad at me, but that's on you. I can't deal with that. I can put the ball in their court, and it's on them. So I have to look at the value of my life versus, am I going to let somebody else devalue my life? Makes sense?
It does. I was thinking about when you said that, I'm going back a little bit, when you were talking about how you didn't know until the 2 years. You really did, because you hadn't experienced anything. So once this happened, you were at the county jail, you're preaching, and then you see this person who was part of your son's demise, and you were able to, God kept you during that time, but you were tested in that thing of forgiveness where you knew, okay, you know what, God, I have forgiven. I've forgiven them. And I think that happens to us in so many different ways. I was thinking about when there was a person that I did not like. And I was, and I call myself the forgiving person. I'm a forgiving person. I'm Journey to Freedom. I'm a forgiver, And I didn't realize really how bad it was until, I knew, when the person would walk in the room, I would leave. That's how bad it was. So I'd walk in the room, I'd just leave. I didn't, because I felt like the person was always lying, a liar. And I didn't really like being around liars, people that lied all the time. So I would walk away. And actually it was during the pandemic when I was home, we were all home, we were all locked in, that the Lord really spoke to me about me and said, all the things that you've done, I've never walked out of the room on you, and I was like, okay, God. It was like, you pray, you talk to me all the time, Vickie, and I don't walk out of the room. I'm right there listening to you. How dare you? Who do you think you are? That you walk out of a room when somebody comes into a room. And this wasn't like so my thing was this. I forgave that person, truly forgave them. I was just not associating with them, but I still hadn't forgiven them for the lies and the different things they did. Now that person still lies to this day, but I can still be in the room with them. I can still love them. So God was just showing me that we don't have to, now we're not good friends and we don't go out together, nothing like that, but I can tolerate that person. Like I can be in their presence. I can talk to them and I have a different kind of love for them that I didn't have before. Because God showed me how much he loved me, and then I was able to extend that love to her, even though she's still the same person. She's not changed. But God wanted me to change the way that I saw her, because that's how he saw me. But I was tested in that area as being this Journey to Freedom forgiveness woman, that talks about forgiveness all the time, that has a forgiveness journal, but what was weird about it was I didn't even really realize it until I got alone with God and he just dealt with me on that thing. So I'm bringing that back to when you were saying about how you didn't really know yet. I didn't really realize it. So sometimes that's why we're called Journey to Freedom. It's because it's a journey that you're on sometimes that you don't even realize that God is taking you through these different steps and you don't even know it. And then all of a sudden you may get a glimpse or a revelation, call it whatever you want, and he shows you. So he showed you, he said, you've forgiven him. But you didn't really know, you prayed about it, and then all of a sudden you were confronted with that thing. And it was like, wow, God, I did forgive this person. And for many people would say, oh, that's stupid. Why would you forgive someone that did that to your child? How dare you, But like you said, there comes a freedom that you have where no one can dictate, because that's what happens is people don't realize that, like you said, they're losing time by wasting all that energy on what that person did to them instead of moving on with their life. And they're staying in the same spot. They're not going forward in life and being able to do things in life because life is already hard, and I just know that so many people, especially during this time, are experiencing so much anxiety, all kinds of things people are experiencing that you hear about. You're like, oh my goodness, I never saw so much of it. But God is letting us know. I feel like he wants us to really experience a freedom that in other words, we are who he says he are, but we still have to go through our process. There's a process that we have to go through. And that was your process that you had to get to. And then you were able to say, man, I forgave this person.
Let me digress a little bit. One of the guys that murdered my son was one of the guys that shot him 8 years earlier.
Wow.
He had put him in a wheelchair 8 years earlier. One of the guys that killed him had put him in a wheelchair 8 years earlier. And Stephen Sapala, the district attorney, asked my son to, give him the information about who shot him, and my son wouldn't do it because he was they were out there doing the stuff that they shouldn't have been doing together. And it was like, he was, okay, I did it. We had this is what happened to me, I got shot. And he said, okay, I'm letting it go. And even though Sapala, district Attorney Sapala told him, you need to tell on him so we can get him off the street. My son said, no, we're all in the same racket. We're all doing the same thing. And okay, this is one of the hardships of that. And so he wouldn't prosecute him. And I asked my son, he said, Dad, I did it. It's over with. I'm done with it. But in the meantime, I got 3 blessings out of that. My son ended up, he quit out there, he quit being out there in the street, and he went back to school and he got his GED. He also ended up working for Sony Corporation out in Westmoreland County. He went back, he ended up getting a computer degree, and he went to work for Sony Corporation in the meantime. And also he ended up giving his life to Christ, all in that, after that done. The guy, when they came back to shot him, they came back and killed him because of what happened in the past, for he was afraid that my son was going to retaliate. But my son had moved past that. Now, I had told my son, said, you need to leave the city. I said, you need to go. He had, one of his uncles has a construction business in I think it's South Carolina. I said, why don't you go down there with your uncle, and you can work down there with him, then you're away from the. He said, no, Dad, I'm not going to leave. So he stayed here for 8 years, and then 8 years later, it had built up in this guy that my son was going to retaliate, and he came and killed him. So the unforgiveness, the forgiveness my son gave scared the other guy. Always afraid he's going to do something. But he never did. And he came back and killed him. So sometimes you have to say, I know this one guy used to be a customer of mine. I call him a friend though too. He was really down in his life. He only had 2 changes of clothes. He had an old shabby apartment, and he had a wife. And so he used to bartender at night, and he put the clothes on that he had the day in the cleaners. The next day he would jitney, and then he would pick the clothes up, and he was switching. And he happened to go to work for this Italian guy, and the Italian guy ended up loving him. And he gave him a grocery store. After he died, he willed him. And so after that, his luck changed. Everything in his life changed. He started making money. He was very successful. His wife ended up going back to law school. She ended up becoming a lawyer. They ended up breaking up, but at the time, because of what he was doing, it just worked in. He bought property, owned property. He was making money. His store was doing good. But he never forgave the guys that mistreated him when he was down on his luck. He never could forgive him. So when they would need him to do something, he would always remind them, remember. Fortunately, by me having been brought up not to look down on people, he loved my father. And then when my father passed and I needed help, he looked out after me because I never looked down on him. But all those other, whenever you would run into him, you run into him in a restaurant, you run into him in a bar, if you were somebody that had treated him down, he never forgave him, and he would always mistreat you. He carried that. He said, no, I'll never forget what they did to me. I was down, and I would ask him for just a couple of dollars to help me get. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't let him. Wouldn't help him do nothing. My dad always looked out after him, and he loved him for that. So I'm saying it can affect you in both ways. You know, you can forgive people, and they still retaliate on you, and you can be unforgiving, and you won't have no friends. And he didn't have any friends because he didn't have people that he could trust. The only people he trusted were the people that looked at him when he was down, had looked out after him. So it's a balancing act emotionally when you're forgiving people. And so that's why I say forgiveness has to be your choice, because no matter what happens when you do it, you have to be willing to say, I'm still going to stay in a mood of forgiveness. I'm never going to let them take that away from me. They're not going to move me off my square because of the fact of what happened. Okay, you don't forgive me? Okay, I forgive you. No matter what you do, you're never going to make me go back on you. And sometimes people, they'll extend the olive branch, and because somebody doesn't take it, well, they snatch it back. Well, once you extend it, you have to leave it out there. You can never take it back. That person might never forgive you, might go to their grave not forgive me, but you have to know that when you go to yours, you did everything you could to make it right with that person and be at peace with it.
I like that. That's really good. That was good because you're right. Like sometimes people think if they say, ask the person to forgive them and then they don't, then they get upset. And it's like, well, I'm not going to forgive them, whatever. And then they change. But it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with you. Mm-hmm. And so you have to take responsibility for yourself and realize that I have to forgive this person, even if they say, because some people will finally, it'll be like years, right? And they'll be like, you know what? I'm finally going to forgive this person. I'm going to go to them. I haven't talked to them in years. I'm going to go to them and I'm going to, And then they go to the person and like, look, I forgive you for. The person like, oh well, I don't care, and not knowing that person has been carrying that thing for years. And then when they finally extend it, then the person's like, oh well, that's on you. So we have to, like you said, decide and know that when I, get on this journey of forgiveness, that it has nothing to do with the other person. It has to do with you and your relationship with God. If you have a relationship with God, then it has to do with that you will forgive them whether they forgive you or not. Just like I was saying about the woman who lies all the time. She still lies, but I've forgiven her, and I can look at her differently because I made a decision through the Lord saying, Vickie, because His love is so... I love using the word lavish. I don't know why. I just love that word, lavish. His love. When I pray, I say, Father, thank you for lavishing your love on me, because I feel like He lavishes His love on us so much. And when He does, and when we really accept it, and we really accept that lavishing love, then we can give it. So I know you always used to say, the way that people preach is the way that their relationship with God is. So if somebody's like, you know what, you going straight to hell and and that's nothing wrong with that at sometimes, but that's how they feel their Father is. You know what I'm saying? That's how they feel their fathers. But I choose to believe that He is lavishing His love on me and that I'm redeemed. So, if I've done something wrong, Lord, I'm saying, Lord, I'm redeemed. I'm not going to be saying I'm going to get this back. I'm saying, Lord, I'm redeemed, But everybody chooses the way that they want to, how they do it. But I've determined that I'm going to be one that says, Father, you have lavished your love on me. You've lavished your forgiveness on me. So I'm going to forgive. I'm going to try my best to love. Some people are hard to love. But yeah, some people are hard to love, but it's up to us to decide that, so we can't, and you can't make anybody else do that. So I like that part about you put that olive branch out. You can't be pulling it back. I really like that because sometimes we do that.
We do it, we do it more often than we think we do it. And because I did all this and you gonna treat me like that. Okay. But they don't know what you went through.
Right.
Because you didn't tell them when you got mad. See, most of the time we get mad at people. We don't tell them why we're mad. And people are good married people are good for this. Why you mad at me? Yeah. Well, what'd I do? You know what you... No, I don't. That's why I'm asking. And we do it in our everyday life. I don't. But if I ask you, then and you tell me, then we can settle the issue right there. We might not never speak again. We might not. I have a friend of mine who was a really, I'm gonna say he did some very foul things. He's passed away now. He was my best friend. We were friends all our lives, and he did some stuff, and he knows I wasn't for it, but he was still my best friend. And people used to ask me, how can he be your best friend? I said, well, when I needed him, he was always there, and when I was down on my luck, really down on my luck, he used to come get me every day. And he would give me money every day. He said, so when we would go out, he said, you got money in your pocket. I don't never want nobody to talk about you. And he did some wrong thing, but he always took care of me. He always had my back. And we never lied to each other. I knew what he did, and I never turned my back on him either. I would tell him what you're doing is foul. So I judged his relationship with me. It wasn't about what he did with other people. And I knew what he did was wrong with other people. But I was not going to hold that against, because if I put him out my life because of stuff that he's done, then I don't have a chance to save him either. I don't have a chance to change his life because I pushed him out of my life. So even if you don't forgive people, what happens? You keep them at a distance, and maybe you're the one piece that's going to trigger something in them to change. But if you see, when I approach people, even if I know people that don't like me right now, I purposely stay in their face. I'm an agitator like that anyway, but I will purposely, but not because of that. I stay in their face because why don't you like me? If you don't like me, tell me why you don't like me. I'm giving you every opportunity to tell me, because maybe what you don't like or what you think you don't like has nothing to do with me, or there's reasons that happen. There's reasons. I know there's one guy, one pastor I know, he stutters real bad. And so people think he's not a good pastor. Well, maybe he's not a good preacher, but he's a good pastor because he still has a compassion for people. He still has a heart to help people. He still has a place to love them. So I can't judge you unless I talk to you. So if I'm unforgiving to you, I don't know what's wrong. I don't know what I did, or I don't know what you think I did that puts this divide in our lives. You talk to me, and I know. If I keep pushing you away, I'll never know. I won't be able to help you, and you won't be able to help me or help this situation. So forgiveness tears the wall down. At least I tore my side of the wall down. Now, if you put that wall up, you're building it on your own. You're never going to build it because of me or what I said or what I didn't do. And I put the ball in your court. I'm leaving the door open. Work with that. And so many times you'll see people, like you said earlier, I'm never going to forgive them. What can somebody do so bad to you that you can't forgive them? If you think about it, process it all the way through, what could anybody do to you personally that you never could forgive them? What you can't, they killed my kid. Okay. They killed your kid. Okay, so, and I understand you're angry, but you still got to forgive them. I ain't doing your kid no good. And you need to know what triggered that young man so the next young man his life can be saved because of what you learned. It's a process of choice. It's a process of your mental state and how much are you willing to invest in yourself to make yourself right. There's people walking around sick now because they won't invest in a doctor, or they won't invest in, the doctor says, do this and you'll be better. And they won't invest in that. So if you don't invest in forgiveness, you won't be forgiven. You won't get, like I say, how can you forgive somebody if you don't forgive yourself, and if you don't forgive, how you expect to be forgiven? Don't look at people cross-eyed, oh, they don't forgive me. And you got 10 enemies because you wouldn't speak up and say, I apologize to you. My dad couldn't apologize to people. He couldn't. He couldn't say it. He just grew up in an environment where saying I'm sorry but you could always tell when he was asking you for forgiveness, because he would take care of something for you. Whenever he did something to me that he needed to get my forgiveness, he paid my car note. He paid my rent. He buy me a new suit. And he did that for everybody in his life. That he couldn't say, hey, Vickie, I'm sorry for what I did. He couldn't do it. But he allowed to say, you need some money for how your car note. He would, and that was all the guys that worked for us, my brother, my sister, everybody that was in his life that meant something to him. He took care of you. He couldn't say, I'm sorry, and wouldn't say it.
Wow.
But he would always, what you need? You need suit looking kind of bad, boy. He would do something from his heart for you, and you knew, okay, Mitch, I know, and that it would never spoken again. But you knew that he was asking you for your forgiveness, and so he made it possible for you to continue in your relationship. Even the guys who would work for him, he'd be hollering and screaming at him all day long, and then at the end of the day, he said, "Come on, man, let's go get something to eat. Let's go get a beer or something." He'd take them out to eat, or he'd take them to lunch, or you get your car, boy. He would do something to show his love for him. I mean, sometimes people can't say I forgive. And I understand it because I grew up in that environment. But I knew I doesn't close the door because I know there's some way or something that they will do to say, I'm sorry, if they care. If I put the branch out there, I can't make you say something, but I can watch your actions towards me from that time on because everybody can't do it. So forgiveness, when you say, I forgive, that's why I say you have to be open for it because you don't know how they're going to give it back to you. You know, they might just walk up to you and just hug you because they can't say, I'm sorry, but I love you. I missed you. I want you in my life. I want you close to me. But they couldn't say it. So
I wonder why people can't say that.
Well, my dad couldn't do it because my grandfather was a very hard guy. He was a very hard guy, and my dad could never tell us that he loved us because my grandfather never told me he loved him. But I never had a doubt in my mind that my father didn't love me. Never in my life did I ever feel, your dad doesn't love you. I knew my dad loved me, even though he never said it. Now, you give me some Johnny Walker Red, now he tell me how much he loved me till I got tired of hearing it. But he could never say it when he was just so.
Yeah, I think forgiveness sometimes is hard for people. But I get it, just like everything else, it is really the matter of the heart, right?
Yeah, right.
So his heart was saying,
yes,
forgive me, but he did it through another way. So that's important to know. Pastor Tom, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I'm sure you're going to be coming back on the podcast. Listen, everyone, we've been talking about forgiveness and Journey to Freedom. And forgiveness is something that we're going to be talking about for a while now because so many people have problems with forgiveness. Some people say they don't have a problem. They just don't forgive. But whatever the situation is, we're going to be talking about that because we believe that it's such an important subject to talk about, and just want you to know that there is a journey to your freedom. So sometimes we don't instantly forgive people, but there are ways we're going to be talking to so many different people, some that forgive, some that won't forgive, but we're just going to lay it out there and then you make the choice. So God bless you. This is Pastor Vickie Coakely Thornton, the visionary of Journey to Freedom. God bless you. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to Journey to Freedom podcast. These sessions are intended that your life can be transformed in order for you to move where the Lord is taking you. We encourage you to take these episodes and utilize them for your everyday life. We want you to be able to put the word into action. So please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, share with a friend, and follow us on social media for more updates. And go on our website, journeytofreedompgh.com, for more resources. If you were encouraged in any way, we invite you to support us on our Patreon page and to help our ministry do the work the Lord has given us to do. You will get access to an exclusive Journey to Freedom Facebook group, exclusive discounts on our online store, and future in-person conferences, plus one-on-one conversations with the Journey to Freedom team, and more. For more information, check out patreon.com/journeytofreedompgh. Thank you so much for your gifts in advance. Blessings and peace.